All right, Shalom. I want to start out by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today, it's just going to be a quick lesson on this clip that I came across, and it just goes to show you how disgusting our people can be. That's what I'm going to entitle this lesson. This is why we have the laws, which the laws, statutes, and commandments were written, for us, the Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, to pretty much show us how to live, correctly, because essentially the laws are telling us not to do the things that the heathens do, because obviously everything that's written telling us what not to do, the heathen nations were and still do, So I'm just going to play this one clip and bring out a couple scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And before I play this clip, I'm going to read the copyright disclaimer. It says copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. So this clip that I'm going to play is being used for educational purposes only. Fair use, fair use, fair use. Let's get into it.
Like, okay. He hit me, he was like, where you at? Send me your location. I'm like, okay. I didn't think nothing of it for real. I thought he was just gonna come smoke with me and we was gonna chill and that was gonna be it. No. The man came, I told him, I was like, Jock, I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm on my period. And he didn't give a fuck about none of that. The man snatched my tampon out, ate my pussy, and fucked the dog shit out of me in the Airbnb. Yes, I said it. Yes, you did it.
And if what she said is true, because women like to lie, especially, if a man is well known. But if that indeed is true and that's what he did, then he's disgusting, for doing such a thing, because you're not supposed to lie with a woman while she's having her menstrual cycle. That's off. So let's get that in the scriptures, man. It's the book of Leviticus chapter 15 and verse 19. And it says, and if a woman have an issue and her issue in her flesh be blood, she shall be put apart 7 days, and whosoever touches her shall be unclean until the even. So, right. Now, when a woman has a menstrual cycle, she is unclean, because again, blood is leaving her body. That's her reproductive system, resetting. She's unclean for, as it says, 7 days, really 10, but you're not supposed to deal with it. This is why in the ancient world, a woman would stay in the separate quarters. She would stay in a separate house while she was going through her sickness, because that's what it is also, Verse 20, it says, and everything that she lieth upon in her separation shall be unclean. Everything also that she sitteth upon shall be unclean. So, right, this is one of the laws that we simply can't avoid in this society, where in certain jobs where we work, women work there and then, they show up to work on their menstrual cycle when in reality, they should be at home, until they're done. But, just like it says, everything that woman touches or sits on is unclean, and this is what you're supposed to do if, she touches you. And whosoever toucheth her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. So, right, if you touch her again, you're unclean, but you're not supposed to lie with her either, Verse 22, and whosoever toucheth anything that she sat upon shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the even. And if it be on her bed or on anything whereupon she sitteth, when he toucheth it, he shall be unclean until the even. Right, just, reiterating, if a woman touches anything, whatever object she touched, If a man touches it, he's unclean as well. Verse 24, and if any man, this is the main point, and if any man lie with her at all, and her flowers be upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days. And all the bed whereupon he lieth shall be unclean. And right, the flowers, it's talking about her blood, but let's see what it says, in the concordance. And yeah, Strong's H 5079 says nadah, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. What does it say? Impurity, filthiness, menstruous, set apart, impurity of ceremonial, impurity of menstruation. So right, that's what, that means, her flowers. Just like when it talks about when a woman passes the flower of her age, meaning when she has her first menstrual cycle, that's when she becomes, a woman, But in this case, it says, I'm going to read it again. Leviticus 15 and verse 24. And if any man lie with her at all, and her flowers be upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and all the bed whereupon he lieth shall be unclean. And right, if you lie with a woman while she's on her period, you're unclean for 7 days, because again, that is disgusting, because you're not supposed to do that, man, And this is why this is written, because you got niggas out here that do it, and clearly Young Jock is one person that do it. Or if he doesn't, do it frequently, but clearly in that instance, he couldn't control himself and, lie with that woman. There's one thing if, you were, getting it in with your woman and then she just happened to start it while, you're in the middle of it. That's one thing. But to just blatantly, for a fact, that she's, it's that time of the month and you decide to deal with her, that's off, man. And it's like it says, you're going to be unclean for 7 days, man. And this society, man, that particular thing, man, you clearly see our people still participate in doing this filthy act, which the act of sex, yes, is an unclean act, but is lawful. But in this case, dealing with a woman while she is on a period, that is unlawful, something you're not supposed to do. She's supposed to be separate. And this is also why, a man would have multiple wives, because again, us being Israelite men, we have, we have a high sex drive, so obviously you can't deal with her, while she's going through that. So you would have another woman, to take care of your needs. But the main point being is that you are not supposed to deal with your woman while she's on her cycle, Verse 26, every bed whereupon she lieth all the days of her issue shall be unto her as a bed of her separation, and whatsoever she sitteth upon shall be unclean as the uncleanness of her separation. And whosoever toucheth those things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Until the even. But if she be cleansed of her issue, then shall she number to herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take unto her 2 turtles and 2 young pigeons. The 2 turtles, are 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and bring them unto the priest to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall offer the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her before the Lord for the issue of her uncleanness. And right, that's what the women did in the ancient world, after she was done, on her cycle, when she's, clean, she would take, as it says, 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring it to the tabernacles, for the priest to sacrifice. But in this current world we're in, that's not the case, but that's what, the proper, thing to do. When the woman was on her cycle, she's supposed to separate herself for 7 days. Excuse me, Slakia, or however long her period lasted, but usually 7 days. Then after that, when she's done menstruating, then she can come back. Then she's clean all over again. But you're not supposed to deal with your woman while she's on her period. It's just that simple. So just wanted to do a quick response to that. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.